Before we get started with today's presentation, I would like to extend my sincere thanks to all the minds who have lent their efforts to this work and co-created the knowledge and product we have today. They are who made this possible. I especially want to thank Deb Curtis, our consultant, for her guidance, knowledge, and support. The knowledge we share today, we gleaned from her. As teachers and parents observing children at play, we notice that they engage in certain repetitive behaviors. For example, we see even very young children, babies, will pick up objects and watch them as they drop, over and over again. As babies grow into toddlers and continue engaging in these behaviors, why is it important for us, as teachers and as parents, to foster children's growth in this type of play? And how do we do so in a way that also supports their sign language development? So, what is schema theory? It's derived from specific types of behaviors we see in children, specifically from birth to 5 years old. Schema development seems to be biological, and schema theory explains the reasons that children play. Schema in children mature over time. They grow and shift incredibly quickly, and schemas are impossible to precisely measure. The only way we can measure their growth is from our observations. Cognitive structure is a feature of mind. Environment content either can or cannot be assimilated into developing cognitive structure. To the constructivist, the description structuring the environment is a misnomer. Environments can and must be organized to enhance learning, but structure is essentially a biological, psychological feature of mind. One way to look at this is to say that we are all born with a script. This script helps us to acquire knowledge, and through our actions, we gain a better understanding of our environment. A quote by Piaget describes this beautifully. He says that knowledge is not held within adults or within children, but knowledge is co-constructed through interaction with one another. One important aspect of schemas is the proprioceptive system. This system is what allows us to navigate our world, to be able to close our eyes and walk without falling down. Childhood is when we engage in the world of play and learn about and learn through our bodies. Before I go any further, I would like to talk more about the proprioceptory system. To truly appreciate schemas, we have to dig deeper into the proprioceptory system. This system consists of clusters of receptors that communicate with the nervous system and provide us with awareness of how our bodies exist in space. The proprioceptory system is in constant communication with the brain. This system relies on pre-existing knowledge as well as the acquisition of new knowledge. That's why it's critical to be aware of this area for children from birth to 5. This is where schema development is in full play. Next, I'm going to talk to you about various types of schema and the schema development you can identify in children as they begin to explore their world. Let's all take a deep breath and turn back the clock to when we were children. Do you remember how it felt to navigate the world when everything was new? Do you remember what it felt like when your world only went as far as your eyes could see? Do you remember how it felt to be a child? I don't know that you can remember what it was like, but at one time, we all were children, just babes, and had to learn how to roll over, crawl, walk, jump, run, slide, and swing. As adults, we can think about the passions, hobbies, and interests that we have today. Do any of them include the schema trajectory? Long before we ever get our driver's licenses, we feel a need to move in the world, to move ourselves and objects from place to place. This can even include lifting and transporting our siblings and friends from place to place. Environment plays a huge role in the transporting schema. Transporting objects looks very different depending on your environment. Think about what transportation may look like at the beach versus in a classroom or in a forest. As adults, we still use the transporting schema, but sometimes I will find myself looking everywhere for my car keys, when in fact, they've been in my hand the whole time. How did we come to understand changes in our environments? At what point did we come to realize that ice is made up of the same stuff as water, or that the colors red and blue make purple? Experiencing and exploring through our senses, especially in nature, allows us to develop our transformation schema. In the classroom, the art room is a favorite space for understanding this schema of change, because of course, art itself is transformative. The transformation schema is used by adults and by families every day. It's used, for example, when cooking, combining many different ingredients and transforming them into a delicious meal. Show them, buddy. Let them see. Let's hold it up. Oh, wow. Oh, no. Don't do that. He's so silly. He's laughing now. Ah. Oh, no. For as long as the Earth has rotated on its axis, children have been fascinated by circularity and rotation. Children are enthralled by things that they can turn in their hands, objects that roll, and by being able to make themselves spin and twirl around. When children create art, they often color or paint in circular patterns. Research on infants shows that circles have a calming effect. When we smile, our faces become more round. What is it about circularity that has such a calming effect on people? Whatever it is, we can clearly identify how important this schematic play pattern is for children. This also means, at times, when we see a perfectly shaped hill, we have to be willing to give in to temptation and to roll down it. Peekaboo! This may be one of the very first examples of enclosing and enveloping that we perform with our own hands. Later, it may shift to covering a child or ourselves with a blanket. This indicates the innate need that we have to feel like we're cozily tucked in or to conceal ourselves out of sight. Children enjoy filling a container with small objects, or if the container is big enough, placing themselves inside it. The next time you fill your mug up to the brim with some hot chocolate, grab a good book, and find yourself snuggling up beneath a blanket to enjoy some time to read and drink your cocoa, think about how the enclosing and enveloping schema is naturally found in our daily lives. What do an engineer piecing together a machine, a neurosurgeon delicately peeling back a layer of nerves, and a fashion designer perfectly completing the hemming of an outfit all have in common? They have the same schema that we see in children who take the time to carefully construct a building only to knock it right down. The connecting and disconnecting schemas are developed through working hard to create something, even if it's just to immediately tear it all down. I'm sure some of you still play with Legos, don't you? Or grow gardens? Or enjoy building puzzles? There you have it. When the world is without order, a child knows it, and they will always seek to classify and categorize in a way that makes sense to them. This ties into the positioning and ordering schemas. We often see children organizing their cars or other objects in rows, columns, or on top of one another in various patterns. Us adults, who sometimes find ourselves frustrated with our own organizational skills, can look to children and find deep appreciation for both the patience and the effort that children will put into keeping things organized. Our perspective changes greatly depending on the orientation we are viewing it from, whether that be the way we see our whole environment or a single object. A table looks very different from below than it does from directly above. Viewing things through a hole or tube of any kind changes our perspective greatly too. When we take the time to truly listen, children can tell us just how much the orientation and perspective schemas affect our daily lives. We're often reminded of this when we have to drag a stool over to grab something off the top shelf of a kitchen cabinet, or when we have to crouch down lower than we'd prefer to grab something from a bottom shelf. When we see children fully engaged in these schemas, we see young minds full of joy. Children are learning about how their bodies interact with the world. When a child begins to recognize displacement and the impact that their movements have on the world, they begin to develop mental maps. When this happens, their world opens up tremendously. They have unlimited potential as these mental maps know no bounds. Their understanding of the world goes beyond concrete objects, and their external play becomes a reflection of their schematic knowledge. Kids. Kids, yes. There are 3 kids. Music. Yeah, I enjoyed it. It was fun. Now that I've covered each of these schemas, it's important for us to think about how we can foster growth and acquisition of knowledge in each of these schemas. The development of these schemas will lead to a rich inner world that can be reflected in the external environment. These schemas will be used for anything a child may aspire to do. If a child wants to become an engineer, they'll need a firm understanding of different materials, including their various orientations. If a child wants to become an artist, their understanding of transformation in their environment will influence how they do their work. There is no end to the potential of a child who has a firm grasp of each of these schemas, and when a child also has fluency in American Sign Language, which allows them to understand others' perspectives, a child's future is one of unlimited potential. The accretion of experience occurs as new schemas are always being added to existing schemas to build forests of schemas. As a result, the acquisition of knowledge creates a state in which one seeks out yet more tracts of knowledge. This has made me think. We have so much knowledge, yet we still ask the question, which came first, the chicken or the egg? In education, we know that a sense of wonder can last from childhood through adulthood if we cultivate it along the way and allow the rich knowledge we have gained to instill in us a lifelong love of learning. We need this to come from our educators. The word curiosity has 3 definitions. One has to do with asking questions that pique our interest, maybe asking our teachers. The next is about something being unique, something that stands out. This could be true for teachers or students. The third is about careful, delicate construction, which comes as the result of interaction between students and teachers. All 3 of these definitions make up curiosity. It's only recently that ASL has been recognized as a bona fide language, which honestly was a no-brainer. ASL has linguistic properties and structures. From the universal design perspective, there is growing recognition and acceptance of sign languages and the benefits that they have for children. Sign languages are 3-dimensional, visual, spatial languages where, like in theater, people, places, and things can be understood, manipulated, and transformed in front of our eyes. That's the beauty and power of sign languages. You might be wondering how schemas are related to the use of sign language. Language development occurs in the context of schematic development. Sign languages have all the necessary components found in schemas. A child engaged in schematic play can utilize all of these components, process them internally, and then represent their understanding of them externally through actions like performance and play. We already understand the importance of dramatic play, and then when we see the incorporation of sign language, which already has all the necessary components for both communication and play, we see just how well sign languages support schema development. For example, if we take the sign for airplane, we can modify the sign with facial movements and grammar to indicate how big it is or how many people are riding in it. The same can be done with the sign for rocket as well. We can also manipulate signs to easily indicate whether a vessel on water is a dinghy or a ship as large as the Titanic. Now, we have a fantastic storyteller who is ready to take you out of this world. See? So, there's a boat and a plane and a rocket. Yeah, that's my favorite. And that one too. And that one too. Ready for takeoff. 3, 2. Get your helmet on. Get your seatbelt on. 1, blast off. Oh my gosh. Did we make it? Yeah, we made it. We made it. That was scary. Okay, now we're ready to walk on the moon. Big step after big step. Look, no gravity. I missed out on that launch. Next time. Sometimes we need to describe how different substances feel or how they behave, specifically where different forces are or are not being exerted on them. For example, tugging on the rope. It's so easy to pull this rope, but now it's getting harder. I have to keep pulling the rope. Let's say there's a medical situation that occurs. How do you describe what's happening? Well, and then it bends all the way down and stays. Yeah, you have to brush your teeth a lot. If it keeps bending, it could almost fall out. Ironically, humor is quite a serious developmental concept. It requires thorough understanding of situations and context to actually be funny. Humor can be found on a stage, but also in everyday life. One type of humor is physical or slapstick humor. Generally, understanding humor, performance, and everything along those lines is an important part of art because it represents the ability to understand perspective and take on different roles. When someone is able to change their role, this shows that they are able to change perspective. So, what is funny here? Yes, we need to take you to the hospital to sew your thumb back on. Oh no! I'm just teasing. But wait, look, do it like this. Like this? Oh, you fooled me. I thought you really pulled off your thumb. Now that we understand more about schemas, we have to consider the ideal conditions to stimulate these behaviors. We know that a garden must be fertilized before its seeds can sprout. I'd like to share a quote with you here from Paulo Freire. It's a quote from his seminal book, Pedagogy of the Oppressed. Through dialogue, the teacher of the students and the students of the teacher cease to exist. And a new term emerges, teacher-student with students-teacher. In this way, the problem-posing educator constantly reforms their reflections in the reflection of the students. The students, no longer docile learners, are now critical co-investigators in dialogue with the teacher. They become jointly responsible together for a process in which we all grow. The German language has very specific vocabulary to describe various states of being. Freire names one of them, gewachen, which means to become aware of. Self-reflection will lead to that state of being, where we gain an awareness of how various objects and situations affect one another, which helps us as individuals learn to navigate our world. If we care for our garden carefully, we will begin to see our classrooms in a different way. The Reggio Emilia approach is child-centered and constructivist. In the classroom, it provides freedom within structure. Spaces can be adapted to the needs of the individual child. If there are deaf children in the classroom, a language policy can be created, and, well, look at the time. There isn't enough time left in this presentation for me to cover this today. Briefly, before I go, I would like to share a thought about art. I believe that there is an artist inside of each of us that is a constant in the human experience, to create. Ask yourself about the artist inside of you, the one that you have carried with you since childhood, and begin to reflect on that moving forward.